opportunities. So as you probably just heard, we are going to record this event for everybody. And if I can just ask all those who are listeners to actually just turn off their mics and also mute everything, turn off their mics and turn off their cameras, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. So one of the points today is that we've had to pull this together to be England centric. We will do events later on, which will have information for both Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So hopefully that'll be helpful to those others. And I'd like to welcome today a series of speakers who are going to put this clarity out there for us. And first of all, we've got Hannah Clark, who's the policy lead in DEFRA's Transforming Animal Health and Welfare team. We'll have Tom Proudfoot, who's the policy manager in DEFRA's Farming and Countryside programme. And also Gordon Jones, who's the policy lead in DEFRA's Agri-Food Chain Directorate. We also have accompanying us here, we have Karen Spriggs from the RPA. So if we do have any questions specifically relating to the RPA later on, Karen will be able to help us there. And last but very much not least, I'd like to welcome Emma Turnock from Kite Consulting. Thank you, Emma, for joining us too. So the plan today is we've really got about an hour. So I really want to sort of crack on and introduce the speakers. They're going to talk about the individual grants and run through productivity, the slurry grants, the animal health and welfare grants. Then we'll join Emma. Emma will give us some tips of how to be successful in these grant applications. And then we'll actually switch over to a lot of Q&A. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to put some questions in the chat room. We'll be able to really challenge those queries that you have got and provide you with the answers. So welcome again, everyone. And who would like to take the lead? Are we going to hand over to Hannah or Gordon first? Yes, I thought it might be
Gordon, but I do think he's on.
Yes, yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Gordon.
Can you see that presentation?
Lovely.
Yeah. Right, there we go. Sorry. Right. Hi, I'm Gordon Jones, and as Di has said, we're just going to run through the grants that are available, or at least some of the grants that are currently available. So in terms of the funding that is available through the Farming Investment Fund, which embraces animal health and welfare and the slurry schemes, it also sits alongside grants helping with business support, the Resilience Fund, which I will provide a bit more detail on in a few minutes. The R&D, the Farming Innovation Programme, which I also lead, but I won't discuss today, and also obviously environmental land management, which again we will not be covering today. So in terms of government funding for farming, our Minister Mark Spencer announced £168 million at the NFU conference in February. This will help, drive innovation, improve productivity, and support animal health and welfare outcomes, essentially through providing money for investment in equipment, infrastructure, and technology. How the grants work? Well, essentially they're match-funded grants that support farmers, foresters, growers, and related contractors to invest in equipment and technology and infrastructure that will support improvements in productivity, animal health and welfare, and environmental outcomes through slurry management. The fund was first launched in November 2021 and is formed of two strands. The Farming Equipment and Technology Fund, which is the small grants offer, and the Farming Transformation Fund, which provides larger grants, more transformational farm projects. To date, these have been offered to support investments in water management, automation and robotics, slurry acidification, slurry storage infrastructure, and adding value activities on farm. It's our intention to launch a further round of the water management grant, which will probably not be relevant to yourselves in the coming weeks, but this will support on-farm reservoirs and adoption of best practice infrastructure. And Hannah will cover, and Tom will cover slurry grants, and Hannah will cover animal health and welfare infrastructure grants, but there's potential offers coming down the line there. And we will launch a further round of automation and robotics later in 2023. So the Farming Equipment and Technology Fund offers items from has it disappeared, the presentation?
Good. I think it was frozen still on your first screen.
Oh, was it?
Shall I think you're on slide 7. Shall I share?
Yes, because I've been sharing it and it's just disappeared.
I don't know if that was the case for everyone else, but it was frozen for me, so it seems to have fallen off. Is that right? Okay, let me have a go.
You go.
Just an internet issue, I think. Let's go with this. And hopefully that works. Is that
share.
now?
Yeah, so I think
presentation. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. I think we're past that one. Yes, we're on this one. Thanks. And I'll just signal when to move on, Hannah.
Sure, great.
Thanks. Apologies for that. Somebody should have shouted. But I'd frozen. That wasn't.
I thought you were still on your introduction, and I suddenly realised that might not be the case.
Right, we'll crack on. The Farming Equipment and Technology Fund provides smaller grants from a prescribed list covering productivity, improving animal health and welfare, and slurry. Round 1, launched in 2022, was extremely popular. We had over 5,000 applications. And in response to this demand, the budget was increased from the then 17 million, and we made offers of over 4,000 totaling to over 4,000 applicants, totaling more than 45 million pounds. Building on this, we have launched a second offer. So productivity and slurry are live from the 21st of February, but closes on the 4th of April. So I'd encourage anybody wishing to buy any of the items on the list to make their application. We seem to have strong interest at the moment, and Hannah will give more information on the animal health and welfare offer, which opened on the 23rd of March and runs through to the 15th of June. Thanks, Hannah. The grants available between 1,000 and 25,000 per theme, and it's there are 91 items on the productivity and slurry list. 21 of those are new this time, and 19 for productivity and 2 for slurry. There's a further 113 items on the animal health and welfare list, of 66 of which are new, which, as I say, Hannah will give more detail on. And you can apply for the maximum under both portals. So you can apply for up to 50,000 equipment across the two if you so wish to. Hannah, please. Relatively simple process, takes about 20 minutes. As most of you will know, the grants are competitive. So if we are oversubscribed, then the RPA will add up your scores based on the average, and those with the highest average scores get the grant until we run out of money. That's how it's done. We do, following comment from round 1, we do publish the scores now, so people can see how their scores are arrived at, and we also explain how we do it. Thanks. And there's the guide for links. Sorry, go on, Hannah. Yes. Those are the items that's been added this time. I won't go through them, but those are the ones that's there that we've added. Thanks, Hannah. Then in terms of improving farm productivity, this grant was launched last year and supports automation and robotics. It's available for dairy farmers for robotic milkers. We don't fund equipment found in a conventional milking parlour, and the eligible items are what you would expect: the milking stall, the robotic arm, the cluster and all the sensors involved with that, the cluster flush, the teat dip, and also real-time milk analysis equipment to help with management and health. Things that we don't fund are milk storage tanks, vacuum pumps, vacuum lines, compressors, and those sorts of things. And we also don't fund conversion of existing buildings or new buildings to house this. And we plan to launch a second round of this in the autumn of this year. Hannah, thanks. Also open, some of you may have applied for the Adding Value grant, £30 million, grants available between 25 and 300,000. Applicants have until the 31st of January next year, for those that were invited to submit full applications, to submit those applications along with any planning permissions that they might need. And the grants are basically available to fund capital items that will help with processing products that are either grown or reared. And items that are eligible include processing equipment for retailing agricultural products such as vending machines and so on, premises for the preparation and processing of products, and no decision has yet been made on whether we will run a second round of that fund. That's something to work on. Hannah, thanks. And again, the Farm Resilience Fund, I just thought I'd give you a bit of details on the Farming Resilience Fund, which is available. This is to provide advice to farmers and land managers during the agricultural transition, for those so they can seek the opportunities and also address some of the impacts of the changes that are being made. I'll just take the required outcomes are to encourage and enable farmers to become more resilient and competitive, to improve farm businesses, clear about the changes in what the changes in direct payments will mean, feel confident to make decisions during the agricultural transition, and feel supported by government during the transition, and of course not forgetting dealing with any, or helping to deal where appropriate or necessary, with any mental health or well-being issues. Hannah, thanks. In terms of the scale up, the grant competition launched in February 2022. There was 32 applications received from different organisations, and an independent evaluation exercise took place. 17 different applicants were offered grant, and the scale up phase started in October 2022 and runs through until March 2025. And to date, I think we've had just over 2,500 applicants sign up for that advice. Hannah? And those are the providers. I obviously won't go through them, but those are the providers, and there is the web link for that service for those that wish to access it. Hannah, I think that's my next one's my last slide. And the projects provide coverage for the whole of England. Some providers offer regionally or localised based support. Others are delivered nationally. The majority of providers support agribusiness generally, although some will provide sector-specific support. And I think it's a range of one-to-one and group-based advice, as you might expect. And will help with BPS reduction calculators, bespoke action plans and recommendations, benchmarking and financial analysis, environmental and carbon audits, technical advice and support, and business reviews and planning workshops and peer-to-peer learning. And I think that's up for me. Is it Tom next, Hannah?
Okay, I think we're good to go. Thanks a lot, Gordon. So I'm Tom Proudfoot. I'm in the Farming Countryside programme here in DEFRA and have been leading on our slurry grants to help farmers improve their slurry management. So I'm going to talk about the offers we have run, will be running, and the ones that are closing very shortly. So first of all, just a bit of context. So we recognise that farmers will often want to make improvements throughout their slurry management journey to improve nutrient use efficiency of the slurry they're producing and to reduce air and water pollution. So what we've been doing is trying to introduce offers throughout that journey. So I've got them on the screen here, the different bits that we have introduced. So running from animal housing and some of the grants that are available under Countryside Stewardship Capital Grants to do things like improve guttering on animal housing and concreting of yards. We've got the Farm Equipment Technology Fund, which I'll talk about shortly, but which is open now and closing on the 4th of April, which has equipment offers for robotic scraping and also separation. The big new scheme that we introduced at the end of last year, which closed in January, is the Slurry Infrastructure Grant, which is there to help improve slurry storage. And then again, through the Farm Equipment Technology Fund, we've got low emission spreading technology you can take advantage of. And also one to call out as well, so for the new Sustainable Farming Incentive Nutrient Management Standard, which will be available to apply for later this year, we've also introduced a new nutrient management standard where you can get access to advice to do nutrient management planning for how you're utilising your slurries to meet crop needs. So that's sort of overview of the different grants and support schemes we have specifically to help improve your slurry management. Just to go through those one by one. So the Farm Equipment and Technology Fund is open now, closing on the 4th of April, and is part of the productivity and slurry portal, which Gordon was speaking about earlier. And as I said, we offer different slurry items, including robotic scrapers, low emission spreaders, separators, etc. As Gordon went through on his slides, the scheme is competitive. So if we're oversubscribed, items are scored, and there's lots of information on gov.uk about how that works, but broadly for slurry, the items are scored by their environmental impact. So if you look at a dribble bar, that's a slightly different score depending versus a shallow injection because the level of ammonia that they can abate. So do go on gov.uk to look at those different items that are available under FETF, and that list is there up on the screen. Broadly, the items are very similar to the ones we ran last year. If you looked at that scheme, we have added 2 new items for slurry chopper pumps and remote controls for those as well, to help you manage movement of slurry around the farm. And then, as I was mentioning, we have the Slurry Infrastructure Grant, which we ran a first round of from December to January, closing at the end of January this year, and we're just shortly be announcing the full outcome of that, though all shortlist applicants have been now notified whether they've been invited forward or not this round. The scheme is there to help farmers invest in improved slurry storage to reach 6 months and to cover new and expanded stores with covers, and we have equipment as part of that grant as well. The scheme was heavily oversubscribed in the first round, and we have had to prioritise projects to prevent inviting too many forward in one round, but there will be 2 further rounds coming in autumn 2023 and then again in 2024. So do look out for those if you weren't ready to apply in the first round or you haven't been shortlisted this time. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Hannah, who's going to talk about animal health and welfare grants, and otherwise happy to take any questions at the end on slurry items.
Okay, well, I'll introduce myself. Although I've spoken a bit already, I'm Hannah Clark. I'm in the Farming Countryside programme focused on the animal health and welfare pathway grants. So I will talk a little bit about the pathway, what we're trying to achieve, and the funding available. So this is our pathway vision. we're working in partnership with the livestock sector, farmers, vets, and a range of academics, charities, and other experts to design the pathway, which aims to support continual improvement in farm animal health and welfare. That includes a programme of financial support for farmers in the cattle, pig, sheep, and poultry sectors. And that's what we're talking about today. Oh, sorry, I think I just got a pop up. And our overall goal is then to deliver sustained improvements over time that address the challenges of the future as well as those of today. So supporting trade, environmental improvement, etc. You can see on the slide. If we just go to the next one, please, Gordon. The pathway has 3 pillars which set out what we want to achieve. And the support we're making available to farmers is part of this first pillar, which is financially rewarding farmers. The objective of this pillar is delivering health and welfare enhancements through public funding. The next pillar is stimulating market demand. The objective of that pillar is making it easier for consumers to purchase higher welfare products by exploring ways of introducing clear, consistent ways of differentiating between products that meet different animal health and welfare standards, animal welfare standards. So the ultimate goal there is for farmers who invest to be financially rewarded by the market for doing so. The third pillar there, strengthening the regulatory baseline, is looking at ways to identify how we can secure the benefits of the funded parts of the pathway over the long term. So that's over a longer process of monitoring and evaluating the pathway, seeing what's working well, what could work better, and using those insights through co-design, working in partnership with industry again to see how we can maintain those gains received. If you go on to the next slide, please. So to achieve all of those objectives, we're focusing on these central priorities. We work closely with industry, vets, NGOs, and welfare scientists to develop these priorities for the pathway, which represent some of the best opportunities for improving animal health and welfare across the main livestock sectors. You can imagine sometimes different stakeholders have different views, and the final result reflects a compromise on a sort of compromise position that we think represents some of those best opportunities. You can see in the cattle sector, things like tackling bovine viral diarrhea, which obviously we know costs the industry a huge amount each year, reducing lameness and mastitis, upgrading housing, improving pain management at disbudding, dehorning and castration, and improving welfare at pasture, so supporting the normal behaviours associated with being outdoors. If you go on to the next slide, so this shows the funding programmes in the pathway, the annual health and welfare review, capital grants for investments, eradication and control programmes and for endemic diseases, and payment by results. The health and welfare review is a new exciting offer for farmers that will, I think, be the first step on the pathway for many people. It's been in testing since September and opened recently to a wider group of eligible farmers through a soft launch. So that's continuing to grow and has had a really good reception so far. We've also, as Gordon has alluded to, opened for applications to the Farming Equipment and Technology Fund Animal Health and Welfare offer just this month. And is it still March? Yes, it's still March, just this month. And there's going to be we've announced the first animal health and welfare infrastructure grants will focus on calf housing and launch later this year. So I'll focus today on the 2 schemes that are live. If we go on to the next slide, can talk through a bit about the review. So the review is a vet visit. You may know all about this, but for those that don't, it's a vet visit that farmers can receive on a yearly basis. A farmer's own vet or a vet-led team carries out diagnostic testing, collects data, and provides bespoke advice on management to improve health, welfare, and biosecurity of their animals, and can advise on the responsible use of medicines, including antibiotics. Vet and farmer agree actions and recommended follow-up between them, so not including DAFRA. The annual health and welfare review will be funded for 3 years, fully funded for 3 years, and we'll be monitoring the impacts of the rollout, using what we learn to inform the future approach, etc. So that is a live programme that's continuing to develop. Just on the next slide, I've got the payment rates for the review, which are all on gov.uk as well, but just for completeness, if you just go to the next slide, Gordon, you can see that the priority endemic disease being tested is for BBD for cattle. Yeah, great. We're on the next slide already, which is good news. So FATF, the big news this week is, like I said, we've opened for applications. So that's live now. You can make an application online really quickly and simply. All the guidance is on gov.uk. We can send out direct links if that's helpful, including all the details you need to apply. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. And there's been information up. So we've been having lots of engagement over the last month or so on the list. So grants are for between £1,000 and £25,000 towards the cost of items that offer improvements in health and welfare. All of the items have been selected through co-design, looking at those, sorry, the priorities listed previously. So they're all linked to the pathway health and welfare priorities. And that's on offer for livestock farmers with cattle, pigs, sheep, broilers, laying hens, including pullets, are all eligible. We are recommending that interested farmers speak to their vet and get advice on what items will be best for them before they apply, although that's not a requirement and it won't affect the success of your application. So just to be aware of that, really recommend it, but it won't affect the score on that. If you just go to the next page, I can sort of demonstrate how the pathway priorities are linked directly to those items. So taking one of the priorities for cattle, which is lameness and mastitis, I'm sorry, it's not about reducing lameness and mastitis to improve health and welfare and increase productivity. This slide shows how the equipment that's on that list, including the animal health and welfare offer, can support you to prevent, identify and treat lameness and mastitis. You can see that different types of equipment and how they do that on there. On the next slide, just another example showing the upgrading cattle housing priority. We know that many farm buildings weren't optimally designed for cattle, and particularly calves, and the grants are aiming to encourage improvements in ventilation, cow comfort, loafing areas, and enrichments such as scratching brushes. So the first large grant for animal health and welfare will also focus on this priority, being delivered through the Farming Transformation Fund, and it's going to focus on calf housing. If you just go to the next slide, I'll just quickly run through what's happening next. So the support available through the pathway will keep growing. The pathway is a journey. We've opened first the annual health and welfare review to eligible keepers and the equipment and technology grant. And co-design work is continuing in the background. We're continuing to develop further support for 23 and 24 and on. As I said, we'll be expanding our capital offer to include infrastructure projects, enabling farmers to achieve higher levels of animal health and welfare. The new calf housing offer will particularly support improving social contact and ambient environment to support farmers to produce healthy calves that are likely to be more resilient and productive later in life as well. As I've said, building on this, there'll be new support to tackle endemic diseases in cattle and pigs and a range of endemic health issues in sheep as well. So as I've said, the priority for cattle programme is to eradicate BVD in the national herds. You can see that on there. And we will continue to work with industry partners and others to develop these offers and iterate them over time to make sure that they're really working for everyone. So I think that's me, and I think we're passing on now to I think, is it Kate? Emma, sorry.
I think I'm next, am I? Is that
yeah.
Brilliant? Yeah, that was great. It's a great overview of, I think, all the sort of grants and things that are available at the moment. So I've just shared my screen quickly. Can you see that? Is that okay? Brilliant. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of give a bit of a quick overview of sort of how to apply for a successful grant applications and some of the things to sort of look out for. So yeah, I'm Emma Turnock and I'm a consultant at Kite. And I think at the moment there's some fantastic grants out there, but it can be a bit of a minefield as to sort of when they open and close and the different times. So yeah, I think it's important just to take a step back and look at some of the things we can do. So first, some sort of tips looking pre-application really. And the first one, it sounds really straightforward, but just keeping up to date with all of the different dates, grant timelines, the offers available. I mean, you're all doing a great job because you're here today listening to the DEFRA guys go through all of that. But it's just making sure that you've got a decent source of information, really. So I imagine for some of the grants you've received multiple emails from various different companies saying when they're open, but actually just making sure that you've got one really good source that you know is going to give you reliable updates is really useful. So if you're sat listening thinking, well, where do I get that from? Well, there's loads of different companies that will, but if you haven't got anywhere, then the DEFRA Future Farming blog is a really good place to sign up to those updates and get all of those. So the next point is prioritising what is needed. And I think it's very easy to go down the list and whether it's of the small sort of grants or the larger ones and just have a shopping list immediately. And actually, again, just taking that step back, thinking about what is going to make the biggest difference for your business, thinking about really what's going to future-proof your business, not necessarily just what you want. It's looking at the environmental regulations, making sure that you're future-proof in the environmental sense, increasing productivity, reducing labour requirements, making everything more efficient, and it's thinking about what's going to have the biggest benefits for you. And also start thinking about those future grants. There's a lot in the pipeline that we know is potentially coming. There's new rounds that are coming out. So thinking about those in advance, trying to get your head around what might be coming, and maybe waiting until those have come before you're doing work, or maybe thinking about what you would apply for and actually what you'd draw the line at and you wouldn't meet the specifications for. Don't rush the applications, take your time to think about it and think about what you need. I think we're sort of all guilty of it when we hear that the grant's open and we've got ages until it sort of closes and we need to get that application in and you sit on it, and then it gets to a few days before and you suddenly realise you haven't really thought about it. So get thinking about it early, take your time so you can really prioritise what you do need. And then make use of the advice available. So this might be through your own advisors, but there's also some really great advice through sort of catchment sensitive farming available, or the resilience fund that's already been mentioned. So you can use those to get advice onto farm, to give you the specialist detail, to help you prioritise, to help you build sort of exactly what you need for your farm. And then application tips. So once you've sort of entered your expression of interest or your initial application, if you like, what you can then look at. And again, this sounds really basic, but it's really, really important to make sure that you meet those grant specifications. We've seen it before when people will have a grant, they'll go out and buy what they think their grant is for, they put the claim in and actually they're not eligible for that grant funding. So a lot of suppliers, especially with sort of the small grant schemes, they know if their sort of products meet the grants or not, and they'll be able to give you help on that. But that's not always the case. It's not always black and white, so make sure you get clarification before you go out and buy those items. Don't leave it until the last minute. So we've touched on this before in terms of getting that initial sort of application or expression of interest in. But if you've got the claim coming up, make sure you don't just leave it. You might have 12 months, 2 years to get that claim and get all the work completed. But actually, these things take a while. So as soon as you know, get items ordered, start planning commission processes or anything else that's required, because that time does soon go. Check the guidance carefully. I think making sure that you get everything together and you submit everything that you need in the right format, and that can help make everything a lot smoother. Because the RPA don't want to be chasing you for missing information, but likewise you really don't want to be chased by them, because it's just another level of pressure and adds delays to things. So just read everything carefully and make sure you get that right. Another really important point is ensuring that the funds are available. The grants are paid in arrears, so making sure that you can pay for those upfront and pay for all the costs, and you're not sort of having the cash flow pressures is really important. get help there if you need to. I know we've sort of seen quite a lot of cases where there have been quite severe cash flow pressures because there's a huge amount of capital works that are needed to be done or have been pushed to do before the claim deadline. And then if it is a grant that requires sort of financial figures, make sure these are accurate and realistic for you. You're only really kidding yourself if you're plugging numbers out of thin air for these. And then we've already looked around sort of the grants with DEFRA, but just some of the things that I think are really important to look at and some of the really good grants available. So countryside stewardship capital grants, I've just put up, and I've put a few examples of what you can get. I think these haven't had a huge amount of sort of press recently compared to some of the grants. But I think some of the recent changes with these might make them an option where they haven't been before, or might make them more attractive for some people. So it's well worth revisiting, maybe if you've had a grant before and it's been a few years, or if you've looked before and haven't been eligible, well worth looking again now and seeing if you can get funding for some of these sorts of items. I think the slurry infrastructure grants are really, really good. We know there's a lot of dairy farms across the country who do have slurry storage and compliance failures, really. And this gives us an opportunity to rectify that and find a solution. So obviously the first round sort of closed for the initial expressions of interest, but I think there's going to be sort of further rounds. So it's well worth looking at and seeing if you want to apply for the grants and if the grants are something that you can use and utilise. And if not, why not? And do you have compliant storage? And if you don't, then sort of making those plans in place to get your farm up to compliance. The Farming Equipment and Technology Fund was mentioned quite heavily already. I think every farm probably can find a few things in here that they want. Again, it's making sure with these that it is things that are really going to have a benefit to your business and you do need. I think is really important. And the final one I've just highlighted is the animal health and welfare pathway, which has obviously already been mentioned. I think especially sort of some of the larger infrastructure grants that are coming could be quite exciting and things to watch out for in the future. That's me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, Gordon, Tom and Hannah. That was really interesting, and apologies again for being hacked there during Tom's presentation. And that's the first for me after all these years on Zoom. So I think we'll put that one behind us. But I've got lots of questions lining up here, and perhaps I'll just go down in order and do feel free to jump in, all four of you, if you've got something to add to them. Let's start off with the slurry grant then. So having already applied for the slurry grant, and if you've been declined, I know you're going to release a new option of it later on in the autumn and a third one next spring. But if you've been declined already because you're not in a high priority, is there any point in resubmitting? Are those parameters changing?
Yeah, thanks, Di, for the question. And yeah, if there's any bits of detail that folks missed during the presentation, just give us a shout. So yeah, the reason we limited the first round was very much because of concerns about supplier capacity. So it's quite a small field of installers and suppliers that do slurry stores. So that's why we've limited the first round. We hope over time, as the industry adapts and can do more projects, we'll be able to run larger rounds. So the targeting shouldn't remain the same for future rounds. So we'll be releasing more detail on that in due course, but we're hoping that the future rounds are larger so that we can go beyond the layers that we had this time. And I would just say as well, so we did publish sort of areas that we wanted to prioritize the first round. We have actually invited forward farmers outside those areas to the first round as well. So we haven't just restricted it to those specific areas that we publish. So it's always worth applying for these schemes because often there is additional flexibility.
I think I'd also add that if we don't apply for them, you don't know how much demand is out there, which I think is key.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, a further question on slurry, so we'll stay with you, Tom. Are grants available for new build units?
So is this for new builds as in a new dairy farm altogether that was coming in? I'm
assuming so. So the question is, slurry infrastructure grant available for a new build?
So if the question is about a farm starting dairying for the first time, no, in the first instance, the reason the grant was set up was because we know there's a widespread problem at the moment with a lot of storage that's currently in place is not fit for purpose. So the conditions are around upgrading your slurry storage for your existing herd. Obviously, if you're a new farm and you don't have an existing herd, you're not going to have a benchmark to do that against. So the first round was very much for improving existing storage to make sure that you're managing your slurry appropriately for your existing herd.
Lovely, brilliant. I'm not quite sure about this question, but will the slurry grants cover further methane capture equipment in the future?
Yeah, so there's an awful lot of interest in some of these technologies which are coming on the market at the moment. There is options under the round one specifications we had for the slurry store covers for lagoons. You could, for example, use that to help fund one of the systems that's offered at the moment for fitting methane capture onto lagoons. There are other systems that are coming online at the moment. They're often quite sort of early stage sort of proof of concepts that aren't available nationally at the moment. So when they do get scaled up and are available nationally, we'll look at whether those are appropriate to fund through this scheme or through other schemes as well. At the moment, they're sort of being, some of these being supported by sort of more pilot funding. But as they get rolled out, we'll look at it nationally as well.
So just moving across to robotic feeding and the elements that are available within the grant, can it cover other manufacturers, is the question.
In terms of robotic feeders, we don't actually designate the manufacturer, so I'm not sure on the basis of the question. But unless Karen's got anything to say, I mean, we don't stipulate which manufacturer, as long as it meets if it's for the small grants, as long as it meets the specification, and then anything under the robotics and automation theme, as long as it meets the requirements of the scheme, then we don't stipulate manufacturers. We don't favour any one manufacturer.
That's correct, Gordon. Yeah.
Just going back to all the equipment that's involved in these grants, obviously there's supply issues, sometimes getting those equipments in and trying to meet deadlines with yourselves and the RPA. You know, you release a grant scheme, it puts a lot of pressure on suppliers to get those items, whatever they might be. Will there be some flexibility if supply issues do come into question?
We have provided flexibility in the past, and again, you know, we'll look on a case-by-case basis. But yes, the RPA, and again, Karen can speak for herself, but we've certainly given flexibility in the past, and we'll look at things on a case-by-case basis going forward.
I've got a couple of very technical kind of questions. One of them is the tunnel ventilation fan criteria in FETF 288A. Very specific. Does this also refer to dairy cubicle buildings? Alex would like to know.
No, that one's for poultry and pig housing. The tunnel ventilation fan is for poultry and pig.
Yes, lovely. So that's a no, and a no not in the future as well?
We'd have to take separately, but it's this year it's available for poultry and pig housing, but happy to take offline. If you just contact us through FETF inquiries, we can follow up on future rounds, because we're always looking at what we're offering in the future.
Lovely. So heat detection systems then, FT90 states extenders are not available. What is defined by an extender?
That's my area, but I would say that question needs to be fed into the email, the FETF email, and the RPA technical people will deal with that question.
Okay, lovely. Just looking at the question from Sue about the amount for the slurry grants, I think we had 13 million on round one. She's asking if that's being reduced due to the oversubscription or not.
So a large budget is going to be announced for that in the next couple of weeks. We want people have been invited forward already, but a large budget is going to be announced, and that 13.2 million. I think I might also read that question as, are you reducing the amount per individual farm? So not not versus what we've already explained, but the stuff about the budget will be coming out soon.
Can we pick up on planning as well, which is a key criteria to probably the slurry investment grant, but also the cattle housing in the future and the calf housing? I mean, currently planning is in a complete shambles. You know, they're not meeting the deadlines. We've got numerous designations being introduced and other bodies that are actually becoming blockers to getting planning permissions and just allowing farmers to really just simply farm. And I think it's going to become a real challenge. Have you any thoughts on it?
Yeah, should I take that first and then go on? I don't know or Hannah, if there's anything you want to add. So yeah, I mean, well aware that there are lots of challenges around planning permission, particularly with infrastructure associated with the management of livestock, so slurry stores, livestock housing near protected sites, because that infrastructure does tend to be an enabler and source of nutrient pollution, which is a particular concern to protected sites, and aware that there are particular blockers at the moment in some areas. We have been working with Natural England and Environment Agency to try and make that process as smooth as possible for the slurry infrastructure grant, because we've got particular opportunities there where we know where applicants are going to be, we know that they're going to be, you know, building systems that meet certain conditions, etc., and are hoping to write to all planning authorities that have got shortlisted applications with some more information on that. But more broadly, you know, recognise there are issues with planning. It's a complicated and tricky system to fix. Obviously, planning authorities have their own needs and discretions in their own local areas as well. But you know, we are trying to do our best alongside the grants to try and the smooth path where possible. But I don't know, Gordon, if there's anything you wanted to add on other things you've seen on reservoirs or anything like that.
No, I mean, we continue to engage with the relevant parties, but I mean, I've worked on the rural agenda for more than 20 years, and this is continually an issue that keeps getting raised.
I think as well, what we're finding is a lot of what I consider quite minor designations being used as blockers by planning authorities purely because they can, not the big ones that everybody recognises as well. So I think that's a key issue there. I just want to bounce back to probably a question we put to Gordon. Someone's come back about the actual spec for one feeder manufacturer. You have limited it in the detail. Apparently, the current grant is limited by way of spec to one feeder manufacturer. Is this correct? Why?
I'm not aware of that, but again, any technical questions, please feed into the helpline, and the RPA will deal with that. But I'm not aware that we stipulate any manufacturers.
I didn't do that. It's just the criteria. If anyone does it.
Tom, just coming back to the number of slurry infrastructure grants, are you able to let us know how many people actually applied? And how
so we did have, you know, pretty significant numbers. We had well over 1,000. As I said, ministers want to announce the budget as part of a wider set of stuff in the next couple of weeks, when we're talking about the total number of applications, the number that are invited to fill application. But it was really subscribed to well over 1,000 in the first round. And recognise as well that might not be everyone as well, because we know farms didn't apply because they saw how the geo-targeting would work and some of those other aspects. So appreciate that there's, you know, really large numbers of farms out there that want to go for the scheme. We'll be looking at how much we can allocate to it in future rounds, but we'll always be limited in the first couple of years at least by what supply chains can meet, because it is, you know, there are a handful of manufacturers at the moment that make single designs and install them, so we can't let, you know, thousands of applications through in any one go, because we'll just end up pushing up prices and moving competition from the grant into the sort of contract world. So really conscious of that when we're thinking about how many farms we invite through.
And roughly how many do you think were given the successful email this time round out of the 1,000+ that applied?
As I said, that's something that I'd love to tell you, but the way that like comms on these things work, we'll be saying that in a couple of weeks.
Oh, Okay, lovely. A couple more sort of technical questions about timing, really, and this is relevant to all aspects of the grant. Someone's asked here about putting a specific order in for new mattresses, for example, so to make sure that they are made and get them in time at the current prices, obviously with the cost of inflation that we are currently experiencing with inflation. But obviously, can they do that before the grant's accepted? Because I mean, historically, it's always been you cannot do anything until day dot that you actually receive your acknowledgement that you've been a successful applicant. Is there any flex due to the current circumstances of actually putting orders in and manipulating that a little bit just to make life a bit easier for us?
So it's probably more of a question for Karen, but so if I get this wrong, do jump in, Karen. But
Okay.
we have evidence. We've got information in the manual, in the guidance about refundable deposits, and that would be the only option there that you could agree and get you can place an order through a refundable deposit as long as it's a refundable deposit. And then when the time comes that you get your sort of grant funding agreement, at that point you can place that order fully.
That's
if
correct,
that makes
Hannah.
sense. So you can't purchase something before you've got a grant funding agreement because you may not get the grant because it is a competitive scheme. So that's just how that works.
Yeah, and if everybody could just make sure you read that section in the manual, it does really explain that in detail, and obviously it is really important to make sure that you have understood what you can and can't do. And Hannah's absolutely right. So thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Karen. That's really useful. It's tricky though in today's climate to actually manage the whole scenario of getting the products in on time and beating deadlines, etc. Moving on then.
Just on that, Di, though, I think it is worth saying that over 3,000 of the applicants that applied for round one have been successful and claimed, and we've paid out about over £32 million now. So, people are making use, and I think that's more than we ever paid out in any year within Countryside Productivity Small Grants. So, some of the improvements that we've made, I think, are benefiting the industry, and we are, as I say, paying people and they are getting the equipment that they want.
No, thank you for that, and no, recognise that, but equally it's tricky as well. Yeah,
I'm not saying there aren't problems, but I think a significant number are getting what they want.
Lovely. A couple of technical questions then on FETF 27 option. Why has it been limited to screw press separators rather than including rotary screen separators that would be suitable for high health welfare SAM bedded systems?
Yeah, I think that's pretty one for me, Di. So so first of all, actually some of these items are really challenging to spec because there's a really wide range of systems that are out there. One of the conditions of the small grants that we run is that we can't fund anything that might need planning permission or needs to be put on, infrastructure that needs planning permission. So a lot of those other types of separators you mentioned need to be hosted on a gantry. They can need to go for full planning permission, which means when the RPA was speccing that item, the screw press option is one that can be put in without those restrictions. It can be mobile as well. Really appreciate that doesn't work for everyone, and that's quite limiting. One of the things we're looking at for future rounds of the Slurry Infrastructure Grant is offering a wider range of separators as part of that scheme to enable more farmers to install them as part of an improved storage project. And with that as well, we've also got the flexibility to fund some of the supporting infrastructure that goes around the separator, gantries, management of the dry matter material, etc., which actually has a significant cost as well, not just the actual piece of machinery. So appreciate that option will work for some, not for all, but we are thinking about how we improve it for future rounds as well.
No, thank you for that. I recognise the time at the moment, it's 12:30. I know the team are happy to stay on and answer these last few questions. If you do have to leave, thank you for joining us, but everybody's welcome to stay and keep putting a few questions forward, because I think they're really useful and they're really relevant to everybody who's listening. So HVLS fans then on the grants, they do not meet the criteria for proper ventilation and cooling. I also do not see energy efficient systems. IE5 motor technology being promoted above the IE3 electrical ones. This is quite technical. Any ideas on ventilation here? I just thought I'd raise it in case anyone's got any key thoughts.
It is obviously a more technical question, so for the FETF inquiries, but obviously we know that heat stress is an issue for cattle. We also introducing this offer for the first time this year, so feedback on that sort of thing is really really helpful as we continue sort of work through this process. So absolutely send that information through and we can pick it up.
Yeah, no, lovely. Calf housing grant then under animal health and welfare, is it likely to include high health units, igloos, etc.? Any hints there on what it might include?
I don't think I can give any hints on what it might include. I think it's a work in process, but we do obviously have some calf housing in the FETF list as well. So do take a look at that and see if there's something that will suit your needs through that as well. And await further detail on the large grant there.
Yeah, can you remind me roughly when these animal health and welfare grants will come out?
The small grants are live now and large grants will be later this year.
Later, okay, so autumn time, thinking that sort of time. You don't know. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, coming back to probably a Tom question actually. Someone's asked if they can use slurry infrastructure grant to build a slatted concrete lagoon to then make use of a housing grant in the future to build a shed and cubicles above the lagoon. I don't know if Tom's...
I think Tom's had to drop off, so it might be one we have to take offline.
Yes, I think
we can just capture the questions and come back.
Yeah, no, there was a couple of things there really, and a second one that's really a Thomas question as well. That's a shame. So that's really good. So has anybody else got any more questions? Really, there was a question for a simple display of the opening and closing dates of all the schemes in a very simple format to be put on the websites. Just so people could see them all in one place. I think that would be quite interesting. And I know, and I may have missed it earlier, about how you create the competitive scores on the, I think it was the productivity grants. Did you put a link on the screen or when you spoke earlier?
Sorry, in terms of the scores, we publish the scores this time is what I've said, and we have also published how we score, so people will know the how they get the grant will be determined if it does become competitive, and we take those with the highest scores. People will know how those scores have been derived.
Okay, no, that's lovely. So question probably for Karen. Has Karen left?
Oh no, she's still here.
I'm still here.
No,
just
lovely.
A couple of seconds, okay.
It's just about making the claim process more friendly. I don't know if you've seen that one in the chat. Particularly having to upload a lot of bits of information, Karen. How
absolutely. Thanks, Di. Obviously, always looking at where we can make improvements to the system. So you might have noticed this time that it's not serial numbers on everything. So that's really good, but we do still need some of those serial numbers on certain items. So you can see that in the manual. And at the moment we do need to have photos, we do need to have invoices, but we are looking at what opportunities there might be from different technical advancements that will make things easier for uploading in the future. And that's something that we're really interested in and we're really looking at as an agency as a whole. So, you know, at the moment, it's what it is, and we try and make it as easy as we can, but there's opportunities going forward to see improvements.
Yeah, no, I think the one we struggle on is the countryside stewardship, where you're sending your application online and then you're submitting your evidence via email, and it doesn't matter how many times they never meet without a further request for information, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's some amazing opportunities coming up through technology, and that's something that we are absolutely embracing. So hopefully we'll improve those customer journeys and continue to make that easier.
Yeah, no, lovely. Unfortunately, a question probably for Tom. I don't know, Gordon, if you can help on it, but have we got some real clarity on what constitutes an acceptable cover for an existing slurry store?
It'll have to be Tom, that one, I'm afraid.
Okay, we'll take that one offline. Just one final one here then. So recommendations from catchment sensitive or other agencies help farmers jump the ladder or provide them a source of benefit when applying. So the question is, would recommendations from your catchment sensitive farming officer, etc., would that help? No,
it wouldn't. No, it's basically a standalone scheme, and as I've said, the scoring is there, and it will depend on how your items, the average score for your items. So it's not the person that buys the most goes to the top of the list. It's an average score.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out today. We've got a real opportunity as dairy farmers, haven't we, to make the most of these grants. And I have to say, you know, for me, it was just a myriad of the words farm technology funding and grants, and just trying to put some clarity through that and trying to find the links. I know the information's on your websites. I still think it just needs a little bit more direction to get us there in the quickest way. Would be really helpful. But very useful, and thank you all for your time. And those questions that we've left on the side for Tom, etc., you know, we'll take them offline and we'll send them back up to Tom to try and find some answers that do meet everybody's needs. But once again, thank you, everybody. And any more questions, you know, if you can't find the links, do come back to RABDF and we will forward the information for you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.